Okay, we are here tonight to play some Vigor. Got some intrepid travelers here by my side. No one has played this game before because, quite honestly, very few people have. um, and hopefully, we'll change that. Um, this is a game called Vigor. It's a game about the characters, for better or worse. It's a game where uh, we call it a character forward collaborative storytelling RPG. So we use the characters that we build to process the action, and the game really focuses on who our characters are, what they want, what grounds them, and whatever happens in the fiction happens to them, and we care about them. So our role is to create some characters that mean something to us, whatever that means, and create a world that's fun and exciting to play in, and also tell hopefully a compelling story in the end, or a cool exposition story that we all love. Our partners hanging out in the background. I mean, it's a small house. You can't get out of it. Um, cool. So yeah, that's kind of the gist of it. Um, on the whole, Vigor is about people, and um, in this specific setting, we're going to be playing in a kind of a fading land, sort of meta narrative place called Vest, and Vest is kind of a corollary to the overreach of industrialization and that sort of stuff. It's loosely autobiographical for me, growing up in the foothills of Appalachia and growing up in poor places and watching the world around me get destroyed by companies like salt mines and then coal and wood and timber, and now it's strip mining and hydraulic fracturing, and it's all very, well, awful. But um, so this setting is it's loosely inspired by that, but um, it's also obviously fantasy. Um, and we're going to talk a little bit more in depth about the setting. And James, yeah, I saw your note about threads. We're going to hit it all in detail. So I hope you came prepared for a lecture. Just kidding. We've got all right. We've got Vest. This is a once verdant land that's now been kind of, or is in the process of being devoured, really, by the wheels of industry. A rampant military industrial force called the hierarchy has dominated the landscape by and large, and they've set to work doing what they do, which is largely up to us to decide. And it's not only the hierarchy that's tearing Vest apart, it's also an insidious force called the corruption, which preys on the strength and power of the land and its inhabitants. And we'll all be tangling with the corruption on some level as well. So that's Vest. It's largely what we make of it, which is kind of the point of the game. And speaking of that, do we have any questions? Do we have any comments? Do we have any stuff you're burning to say now? Solid nose. Cool. All right. Yeah. The setting we'll define with our threads. The roles that we'll be playing are you inhabiting the lead or lead character, and playing the role of the Stitch. The Stitch is kind of facilitator and additional GM. I'll be doing some things to like pull things together and push the fiction ahead and that sort of stuff. But the story is not only mine to tell, the story is ours to tell. The world is ours to describe. We generate decisions getting made by the table, like capital T, all of us. And that's kind of how this game rolls. I'll do my best. Oh, sorry.
You sound okay now, but for just like a little bit, you started to break up right when you were saying what the stitch is. I think maybe say that again.
Sure. Yeah. The stitch is kind of a not quite GM, not quite facilitator, but in that middle, somewhere in the middle, where I'll be doing some things to help push the fiction forward and put us back on the rails sometimes, and I'll be playing the roles of antagonists and that sort of thing. But the world is ours to describe. The characters are yours to inhabit as much as me. The consequences are yours to describe as much as me. And largely, I'm here to help move things forward. And we call it the stitch because you'll all be creating these really interesting characters who have lots of different things going on. And my job is to hopefully try to pull those together in interesting ways that help our story have some cohesion. So that's the goal. Thanks. Yeah, that one was Teddy. Teddy, my partner in design is a fella called Teddy Humpert. He is out of Cincinnati, and he and I went to college together and played in bands together and all this fun stuff. And now we were not doing those things, and we had to find something else to be creative with. So yeah, good times. Cool. So yeah, Stitch and leads, that's kind of the thing. Us collective, that's the table. And most of the things are going to happen at the collective will of the table. Everybody has an equal voice here. And if there's something that's happening in the fiction that you're not on board with, just say it. Speak up. I mean, the point of this game is for us to walk away with a story that we all love. And if that's not happening for you, I want to know. I'm sure everyone else does too. So yeah. Okay. The setting described, our roles kind of described. If you look in the Roll20 chat or the Roll20 game, there's a journal tab. That's just like it looks a little like maybe a newspaper or something up at the top in the right sidebar. Under there are a bunch of handouts. You can look through any of those. We're going to be working first through either some of the setting threads or the character threads, which are the ones that look like they have playbook names. So if you want to peruse that while we're talking, go for it. I'm going to throw some slides back up here as we chat to put in front of you. The threads, James, you were asking. It's not. They're not actually playbooks. I was just saying playbook as a if you're familiar with like PBTA stuff. No worries. This is not necessarily a PBTA game, and we'll explain how to play it in detail. So let me just throw this. Let me just throw this to you here real quick. This is our couple of pages from the beta guide that's coming together. The setting at a glance I kind of gave you already, and there are a few things that are important. There's magic in this game, and that's through something called the dust. There's the corruption, which is kind of maybe like the anti-dust. I don't know. There's the hierarchy, which is the military industrial force. And there's the spheres. The spheres are just how we kind of divide up the land, and that's that's where we're gonna start with our setting threads and that sort of stuff. We're going to say, okay, is this story that we're going to tell happening in the forge or the works or the wilds? And those things should hopefully conjure up some images as to what they are. But basically, the forge is kind of the seat of the hierarchy's power. The works is where they're setting to work and where all of the operations and the hierarchy's machine is in full tilt. And the wilds are those lands that are kind of untouched yet by the hierarchy. Maybe they're too far out there, too inaccessible, or too unfruitful for them to mess with, or they just haven't gotten there yet. But those three spheres, we have different different story threads we can chase within them, and they each kind of provide a unique perspective for the storytelling. And then each character in Vest can have a journey, which is kind of like their kind of perspective for storytelling. Don't I wouldn't necessarily think of it like a playbook or a class or something like that, because it's more about each journey has waypoints in it, and those are like the special abilities. So it's meant to mark like what's happening in the fiction here, what's happening with my character. Have I like kind of reached this milestone by fighting my way through it? Or maybe I'll pick up a waypoint on the journey of the cuff. If I reached it by being a keen scavenger, pick up a waypoint on the journey of the sift, that sort of stuff. So that's going to be part of character creation when we get there. But for now, we're going to start with creating some threads. And that's the page on the right as you're looking at it on the screen if it's coming at you. I don't know what the resolution looks like to you, but it's also in your journal in Roll20. But, oh, good. Well, basically, we're going to throw some ideas out. And we're going to yes and each other. This is a yes and game. We're going to like pick up something that someone else is running with. We're going to go with it, add some details to it. And before long, we'll have several threads that we can all kind of put together, and we'll have a clear direction for where our story is. We're going to start by just saying like whether folks want to set a story in the forge or the works or the wilds. We can throw a bunch of these out there, see what sticks, what ones people like and want to add stuff to, and then we'll go from there. Since the resolution is already good for most of you, I think we can probably do it off of this window. So yeah, if something jumps out at you, just shout it out, call it out. I'm going to write some stuff down on Roll20. In fact, I'll move us all to the threads window anyway, and you can all your Roll20 window should be changing now, and you can grab a type tool and feel free to type anything out on here if you like. But all right, here we go. Setting threads. We've got the forge and the works and the wilds. Stories in the forge explore relationships among fellow cogs in the machine. The works is relationships among complicated people on either side of a broken system. And the wilds are relationships among threats and allies in a time of scarcity, kind of out on the edge, and without much to go on. So is anybody particularly excited by one of those kind of spheres?
I really like the idea of the forge or the works myself.
Cool. Cool. James is into the forge.
I don't think I have a preference, but well, I guess I do. I think the forge probably sounds pretty interesting. I like the idea of a kind of an urban deal.
Yeah, into it. Well, that's 3 out of 4. Chris, are you feeling 4G?
Yeah, Forge is cool with me. The works.
You're starting out outvoted, Chris.
I'm cool with that.
Cool. Well, let's go to some threads for the forge. Again, these are all just prompts. Take them for what you want, or throw something else out. But let me present them to you. Threads from the forge. We have basically like 3 main categories, and then each one, and those each represent like a main theme of what's going down, and then sub themes underneath those, and details, questions that we'll get to answer underneath that. So I'll just give you a second to check those out, and then start throwing some stuff out as you see it and you like it. And I'm going to start jotting some notes down on the Roll20 window.
They all seem pretty interesting to me.
Yeah, if somebody has one of the main ones, if you just want to throw it out, that like, I'm interested in exploring the idea of a rising tide or a shifting wind or a looming threat, throw that out, and then someone else can throw stuff to it. Or if you have a different main thread, hit it.
I think the ones that are appealing to me, and this is like the specific subcategories, but a change in leadership or whispers of an old name are kind of interesting. I don't know if anyone else has any thoughts.
That sounds pretty rad. I see Ferret. You say thinking something like neo fracking, reckless new pursuit of materials, promising abundance now for a price in the future.
Yeah.
It's so not relevant to our times, though, is the thing.
I live in Oklahoma. Let me tell you about that, about the price that's already being paid.
Oh my God.
We're having earthquakes in Oklahoma because of fracking. It's so bad.
Oh. Okay, so we've got some votes for a little too quiet. We've got some votes for something kind of neo-fracking. Whispers of an old name. Yeah, if anyone has some stuff that they want to bounce off of that's reaching out to you, hit
I
it.
think it might be interesting to combine whispers of an old name with something is actually growing.
Oh, I love that.
That sounds kind of Lovecraftian. Whispers of an old name combined with something growing in the earth.
It could even be combined with the neo-fracking idea of like we're digging and finding something, unearthing something.
Or it could be like, well, the whispers of the old name is maybe the person who's created this new technique.
I like the idea of, I like the combination. I think that's pretty cool. Like, I like the idea of something in the earth that we have that has like kind of been uncovered, right, for ill or for good, but maybe hinting at ill regardless, and combined with yeah, like the whisper of an old name reminds, I don't know, it has like sort of like religious overtones to it to me. Like there's something like not spoken of, anymore. I don't know. I'm kind of into
Yeah.
it. So.
No, totally. Something like you said, Jason. Something Lovecraftian.
Yeah, James's note about Bloodborne. Actually, I was thinking of like I was literally thinking of I was thinking of Dark Souls, but the same idea. I was like,
yeah,
it's in my brain. Yeah.
Love it. Yeah, I love all that. Okay, so that feels like a direction folks are excited about. Yeah. Affirm. So if folks are into some of those, let me throw out some of these other questions in there. We've got, let's see, under something actually growing, and let's see, something actually growing and whispers of an old name. Okay, so what threat does this old name pose to the machine, as in the machine of the hierarchy?
When we say the machine, Jake, do we mean a literal machine here, or is it like more of like a bureaucratic technocracy thing?
Intentionally vague.
Okay, good. So we don't know. All right. I just wanted to clarify.
For sure, yeah. Thanks. Yeah, take it whatever direction you're feeling.
It could be both. It could be both a literal machine and the technocratic bureaucracy controlling that machine.
Yeah, absolutely.
If we're kind of playing with the religious overtones, a thought that occurs to me is maybe this old name, this thing that we're uncovering, is some sort of old god, and the machine was actually designed to be like the anti-god in a sense. It's designed to be not a personage, but like a machine, something that's a little bit more objective and impersonal.
I'm very into that. That sounds like a really fun idea.
Oh, yeah. So an old god machine. Like some sort of ancient technology.
Yeah, I'm almost picturing like in concept the Magi from Neon Genesis Evangelion. They're based on people, but it's basically a machine that votes on how to run the society instead of people doing it.
And what you're suggesting, Chris, is that that's our machine, and the thing underground is like some sort of like Cthulhuid monstrosity or whatever, or okay.
Maybe something that used to rule over people until it went to sleep or something. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh my god, yeah. So I'm so into this all. And James, I don't know if everybody saw this idea. What if the machine is what's growing? Which I'm into that.
It's not supposed to do that.
And maybe that's why the old god is returning, because like it's like a got to bring balance to the force or whatever. So
I refute any Star Wars references. There's not enough Star Wars influence in this game or its creators. Yeah, no, it all feels a bit Star Warsy sometimes, but we love it. Yes. Okay, so we've got an old god machine. So are we thinking the old god machine is what's growing?
That's what my original thought was when I made that comment.
And it's been like unearthed to some extent. Or maybe we don't. Maybe we're not there yet.
I misunderstood. What I thought was being suggested was the machine of the literal machine, and as expressed in this sort of like strange bureaucracy of the hierarchy, that's growing, and the thing that's returning to the earth is a response to that. Does that make sense?
I'm into that.
I'm into that's how I understood it, but I don't know if that's what
I could totally take it. I mean, there's a both and there too, you know.
Yeah. That's not what I intended, but I like it.
Yeah, like I mean, I think.
I'm sorry. I thought that's how I intend. That's how I interpret it, I guess. But
yeah. No, I think there is totally a both and there here because of the growth of the hierarchy. This thing underground is growing, or this thing that was meant to return has been powered up because of it, you know. I'm feeling any number of those things. Okay, the machine's growing, and this other thing is gaining power because the machine is growing. That feels very corruption-y to me in the first place, in terms of like how we describe the corruption in the book. The corruption is kind of mostly just described as like the overreach of power, or the in whatever that means. And in fact, you as player characters, as leads, you can take corruption onto yourself, and if you take too much of it, you'll receive corruption effects, and you'll ultimately become an aberration, or an aberrant, and that's a lovely way to retire and spend your days on Vest. But yeah, so I mean, all of these things kind of put me in that mood, and I'm totally cool if we want to describe the corruption as this kind of like, maybe we're taking the timeline back a little even on Vest, and this is kind of an origin story almost of like where the hierarchy is kind of growing and decimating, and they kind of strike oil, but not what they were hoping for. They unearth this ancient technology, and it starts to like cause decay and ruin. So there are plenty of things that go off of that. It feels like we're all on the same kind of meta at the moment, or near enough. But James, literal machine also physically growing on its own, re-corruption, if that makes sense. Can you unpack that just a little bit for me?
So my thought about the machine growing in relation to that old god originally was the old god causing the machine to also physically grow, like it itself is partially infused with that being's energy and is now growing in ways it was not supposed to.
Oh man, it's so insidious and lovely. Oh, that's great. That's great.
Yeah, I'm almost the machine could have been maybe derived somehow from that old god, and now it's starting to behave in a way that they were hoping it might not, just because they couldn't control it.
And I was thinking like the corruption of like the bureaucratic side of the machine could be like those that work for it or interpret it have started pairing off in little cliques that know the machine, or at least know their growth of it the most.
Totally feeling that. Yeah, that brings up a great point. Like, let's talk maybe about more of the like micro focus, because that's where our story is going to live, right? Like, I mean, unless you all really want it to be, I don't imagine that our first story here is going to be like, all right, you all fly out on your superpowers and start fighting this old god. But I mean, then again, sure, why not? But let's zoom in a little bit to like the kind of workings, like the story again is about the human beings, the people, the characters through which we view this kind of thing. Even though this huge thing is happening in the meta, we still have all of these all of these cogs in the machine who are just functioning in their day-to-day. They've probably somewhat blind to what's actually going on. They've probably been lied to and deceived. They've probably been told to get out there and keep their heads down and power through. And they've probably been, just doing their stuff, but they know something's up. So yeah, we've got stuff narrowed down, I feel like, on like, I mean, we haven't named this threat unless we want to call it the corruption. And we kind of get a sense of what it stands for, and we get a sense of what threat it poses to the machine. I want to know who, well, this is maybe self-evident too, but the question is, who will pay dearly if it isn't stamped out? Is that just everyone, or
I was trying to think. It might not be everyone. a little hard.
I'd like to suggest that like maybe there's I don't know. Like I like the idea of there being something more granular and more precious that we all care about that is threatened by this. You know, I don't know exactly what that is, but like, you know, I'm thinking of like, for whatever reason, I'm thinking of like the childlike empress in the Neverending Story. You know, like sort of like at the heart of like this sort of calamity, you know, but there's have to be something like that. That's kind of where my brain is at right now. Like, is there some sort of like individual or religious figure or person who like symbolically means a lot to the community who is directly connected to these events? You know, I don't know. Or it could just be, you know, apocalypse calamity for everybody too.
Yeah, I mean, obviously,
that's also fine.
I think the former is really, it provides a lot more interpersonal drama and stuff like that, which is cool. Let's see, that I'm totally into that being like a person or figure or figurehead. This would probably be within the hierarchy at this point, or like, because everything kind of happening in the Forge is very much, it's the hierarchy or they just don't know you're there. So if we're playing in the Forge, we're all kind of part of the cogs in the machine on some level. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't want out, and that doesn't mean that we're on their side or that we know what's going on and we're okay with it. But it creates a lot of possibility for tension. Also, it could be that we end up with characters who are trying to get in because of these ripples that are happening in their world that are outside the Forge, you know. So that those are all possibilities, but I just kind of want to throw that out there that like as we're in the Forge, it's like it's hierarchy central, like the top brass is here and everything is very much under their scrutinizing eyes. So yeah. So a prized cultural center for the Forge, or a prized person.
I was going off like what Jason was saying, like of a prized entity, and I was thinking something like the factotum or some kind of person of knowledge whose entire job is just to, like, input facts into the god computer. Like it is a historian of like as neutral as possible, and all these little clicks of the growing machine maybe trying to get them on their side to like, you know, you put in our truth in the computer then judges us better, and things like that.
Love it. Yes.
I like that.
So into that. I love it. Like James said, it's a person who is also a cultural center. And I think that hits all of my buttons at least. So I super love that. So there's a historian whose job it is to put our history into the books, as it were. Who's this person? Who's this historian? What are they called? Do they just go by a title? Do they have a name?
The archivist.
Yeah, I'm saying like the librarian, the archivist, the scribe.
I really like either the archivist or the scribe. Those are both really cool.
Chris, you got a feeling?
I like the archivist, I think, between those two. My other thought maybe is like who this person is. Like, because on the one hand, I could say that maybe someone like this needs to have been maybe like trained and maybe be older to be able to look at things objectively. But I'm also thinking that the inverse could work, where they are a child, and because they sort of see the world in kind of like this pure, unadulterated way, they're able to be more honest and objective about it. I don't know if anyone has thoughts there.
I like both of those. I will say, obviously the them being young has the potential to hit on a line for me. It just depends on like how we want to play scenes with them, you know, and
I mean, they could be a young person and still get the same idea across.
I think so
right?
too. Yeah, totally.
I was thinking of something sort of like the Dalai Lama. Like it maybe, you know, anyone can be them. Like it's a reincarnation kind of deal, and like, you know, the current one just happens to be 16. or so.
Oh God,
Yeah.
I love this. It's a role that you inherit.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, so this person didn't even have a choice. They're just
Yeah. Oh, but what choice do they want to have made? I wonder. Okay. We've got so much cool stuff going on here. I'm sorry, I'm writing it in my notebook, and because it's too much for me to keep up with on in digital format at the moment, but I'll get these threads up on the Roll20 page for us at eventually, so that we can all have them in front of us in the same place. Yeah. Okay. I'm into all this. This is great. We have kind of a central character who is in peril because of this. I think we can maybe figure out how that's happening as we play. We don't need to discuss that now. Obviously, we want to leave some mystery for the play. But I think I'm thinking like, what's the connection between? How is it possible that there's a connection between this person specifically and the awaking evil? Is it maybe through the technology, or yeah, James?
Yeah, I was gonna say from what Ferret and Jason were saying before, it sounded like this is a direct interface with that old god, which is how it would be a threat. That when you're entering history, you're entering it into a direct interface with that old god.
Some sort of computer buried deep beneath the ground that suddenly starts speaking back.
I could see it being kind of a mind melding process where, in order to get the sort of detail, it would have to be taking in a whole bunch of sensory information and not just let me input the important words. And so because it's a mind meld, maybe that's why it's so threatening, because it's kind of now pushing back a little bit.
And is this person kind of an avatar now, do we think? Or do we know?
I actually did have a thought along those lines earlier, of it, because like the phrase that came to mind before we landed where we did was mouth of the machine.
Oh, yeah.
Where they would also be responsible for speaking for the machine. So yeah, maybe it's both.
They're the interface.
I like the idea of, like we were sort of saying, like different clicks that work in the machine, the cogs. Maybe each of them have like someone that, like, there's a council of interpreters who interpret the word, because like the machine is growing, and I assume that would mean the ways to interpret the machine are growing.
This is very like the Cylons that are in the pool of water, like that
Oh, yeah.
connected to all the rest of the fleet or whatever. It's like that.
Love it, yeah. Okay, I think we've got a lot of cool setting threads here. I'm curious as to whether you all want to flesh that out some more, or whether you want to move into creating some lead characters.
Maybe I think it would be helpful, Jake, if you gave us just like a recap of like what we're doing, because there was a lot of ideas thrown around. I want to make sure I have it all kind of like, which is awesome, but I just want to make sure I have it like this is what is settled on.
Yeah.
Canon right now.
Yeah, exactly. What's the canon right now? Exactly.
Good question. That is a great question, Jason.
Do you need a break?
I don't know. Yeah, I'm not 100% sure where we are on all of this, because there is a ton going on. But here's what I know. We're in the Forge. The Forge, as kind of the flagship of the Hierarchy's machine, has been, for as long as anyone knows, collecting information about the world around them and interfacing it with this computer. Maybe they created it, maybe they found it, maybe it's the source of their power. maybe. I don't know. There's been a long line of archivists whose job it is to interface with this computer. And suddenly it has started communicating back. Or maybe not suddenly. And from a meta standpoint, we understand that this has kind of happened in what's the word? In conjunction with this increase in the hierarchy's numbers and forces, as they've been growing and expanding and setting to work in the works. Maybe, and I'm totally fine with this kind of being more of an origins place. I think that could be really fun. They've just kind of set shovel to dirt, as it were, and the things are starting to break down, and the world is decaying faster than it seems that their machine is excavating it for some reason. And the archivist themselves is in danger. So I think that's where we are. If anybody want to throw some different stuff back at me from there? Or if I missed anything, yeah, I mean, I was also trying to keep up. There were a lot of amazing things that happened.
I think that sounded about right based off what we know so far.
Okay, so we're in the forge, and the archivist is in danger. They're young, 16-ish, and have historically been both the input and output interface for the computer. There are all these other things that we can flesh out as we go. Do you all want to take a quick break and process that, and then we can come back and start into some characters?
Yeah, I could go for a couple minutes. That'd be great.
Okay. Yeah, there's a lot to process. So think on all that stuff, and where and what sort of lead character you feel like you might want to inhabit. As you're thinking that, I've got some options here for you. They're in your journal on the on Roll20 as well. If you want to dig into those are the ones called things like the where am I? Roll20. There you go. Those are things called things like the haunted, the remnant, the sling, and the spark. Those are four of the kind of character archetypes that we have. Those have some ready-made prompts for like fleshing out backstory and that sort of stuff. However, if the setting inspires you for a different sort of thing, we'll go for it. These are not things that you have to work off of. They're just there to help make things a little easier for you as you build your character.
So we can kind of mix and match and stuff like that?
100%. Absolutely, yes. This is about creating a character who means something to you and who is fun for you to play and inhabit. So, yeah. Go team. We'll take a couple minutes. We'll be back and we'll make some characters.
Cool.
All right. Hey, gang. I'm back. Is everyone back, or are we waiting on some folks still?
I'm back.
Cool. Hey, Chris. Yeah. I am feeling a lot of the stuff going on in the chat here. Got some strong connections to the archivist, which is great. It'd be awesome for y'all to be connected to the main character of our story here, or even be the main character in the story so far. I'm totally into that too. Chris, you were saying you could see arguments for it either way. Anybody have arguments either way?
I would be perfectly fine with someone playing the archivist or putting my own. I don't think I'd want to put my own spin on it, but if anyone else wants it, go for it.
Yeah, I think if enough people are interested in that, I think it could be very cool. The only real argument I see against the idea, and it's not like to say that like we shouldn't do it, it's just that the idea that they could kind of be the center of the mystery, and so it's more a story about the people around the archivist and kind of how they're reacting to these changes than about the archivists themselves. If that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it does force the mystery, right? Like it forces us to understand it right away, which is neither here nor there. I mean, it's interesting exposition and personal drama for but it puts a lot of storytelling weight on whoever plays the archivist to let us know what's happening to them and how they feel about it. But one way or another, we've at least got interest in somebody kind of being the archivist, someone being a sibling, someone being mother or father. This is obviously becoming a pretty close knit, pretty tight circle around these folks. What do we feel like? I mean, it could shape up that this is like some sort of little enclave within the hierarchy that's kind of closed off almost as like I guess I'm thinking of it almost like a generator, you know? Like the hierarchy kind of lets them be because they keep the things going. Obviously, I'm not saying that they're like powering it, but all of the stuff that we kind of threw out there in the initial world building was like kind of centering around this being some sort of strange lineage thing with some sort of, at least to me, it seemed like some sort of mystical power attached to it, and something beyond the normal. So all that to say, I'm loving the idea of this being like this close-knit group within the hierarchy, and they gotta like try to free the archivist from this thing that's happening to them, and get out or whatever. I mean, it's for you all to decide what your own narratives are, but I'm into it either way.
I could, to that point of it kind of being a close knit group, I could see it almost being the archivist's sort of support group in a sense, almost their staff, family advisors, maybe assistants, if that, or maybe handlers would be the better term for it. Yeah, like an attendant, like James said. Maybe just kind of like it's this little group around the archivist that may or may not include the archivist as one of us. But then we're kind of like all together, and we've kind of got, in theory, a common sort of motivation, and that we may or may not care about the archivist, but we're definitely close to them.
Super cool. So far, we've got ideas for the archivist, a sibling of the archivist, an attendant, a mother-father figure, or proper mother-father, or anywhere in between.
I think for me, like I was interested in playing either the mother or father of the archivist. And we talked about this idea of the archivist being almost like a Dalai Lama type figure, where like they're chosen as a child, right, and or as a young person, and or maybe they were chosen as a child and now they're 16 or 17 or whatever. But in any case, they didn't have a choice really, and I like the idea of like if I were going to play like the actual parent or the biological parent of the archivist, I would want it to be something along the lines of like, I did not want my kid taken to this in the first place, and now they are in danger. And furthermore, I am not part of this. Like, I am like the like maybe I'm a farmer or something, right? Like I'm not like, you know, I think that I'm not like I would want my character to not be like, I would want them to be like something of an outsider, like, you know, kind of situation, who nevertheless like gave up their child to this machine because that's what you do, right? So
Yeah, super cool. I'm totally feeling that. And I mean, just because we set our threads in the Forge doesn't necessarily mean that's where our story starts. We can pick up the action, set scenes wherever along this timeline and wherever we like. It could be that our central characters that we focus on are this mother or father and their attendants or family or small like enclave or whatever, like, and the story is about the journey to the Forge, because of this strange connection that you understand
I think
going on.
I think it's cool for like us to be at the Forge, but I think it just like, for me, like I like the idea of like the character not being part of it, right? Like I'm there now, but like it's not like my jam normally, right?
Love it.
Yeah, and I thought about being the previous archivist, like maybe at a certain age the spirit leaves them.
You age out.
Yeah, and like I like the idea of like, especially if Jason is being the parental figure of the current archivist, like being blamed for not doing better, like, or something like, you know, if you had eaten right, you would have stayed bodily young enough for the spirit. If you had exercised more, if you had just been more neutral. Why did you take a wife? You're terrible at this.
Yeah, I think that we know where your character's going. I mean, that feels all very yes.
Either that, or I want to be like their ley line, that who was their ley line to the archivist and them. Like the person, like your son or daughter is doing well. Well, why don't you let them like send a note to me and let them know themselves? Okay, I'll bring a note next time. Well, why didn't they sign their name? Okay, I'll make sure they sign their name last time. This isn't their handwriting. The eyes are too neat. I'll let them know.
Love it. Yeah. Okay. We've got some good themes. Is anyone feeling like strongly at this point as though they want the archivist to be in play as a lead character played by y'all, or a supporting cast played, I mean, by anyone at the table still, but it's not your main lead character that you play?
I think I could go either way. I do like the idea of interacting with the archivist, but I also kind of equally like the idea of them just being in a sort of fugue state or something, right? Like I think either of those is okay for me. So I don't think I have a preference.
Cool. All right. Well, let's get into some character stuff, and we'll see what develops. And if anybody's feeling strongly pulled that direction, they can just start to flesh it out, and that'll be great. Creating a lead character in Vigor is mostly the what do I want to say? The stuff that matters on the big meta scale is getting your role play prompts right. Role play prompts are these things on your character sheet called narratives, natures, and roots. Every lead character has these kind of this three-faceted prompts that express basically who they are, what they want, and what really grounds them. And they all have different functions in the game as well. When you pursue your narratives, you gain advancement points in your narratives. And when you reach an advancement in your narratives, meaning you've worked on the things that drive you, you can increase in your vigor, or you can gain a new waypoint on your journey, which is a special ability. When you engage with your roots, these grounding relationships or items or things like that, those help remind you of who you are and what you stand for. And when you reach an advancement with your roots, those help you fight your conditions and fight off the call of corruption. When you explore your natures, kind of the essence of who you are, those have a more mechanical effect on the game. Natures, when they're invoked, have more of a like, okay, this is a +1 -3 nature, +2 -2, +3 -1. Those have the ability to affect the fiction as it's happening in a mechanical way. And you say like, okay, what's happening right now invokes my nature of being a comforter, and maybe it's affecting that in a good way, and in which case you take the bonus on it. Maybe it's affecting it in a bad way, in which case you take the penalty on it. That sort of thing. There's character sheets in the Roll20 doc under characters. If you open one of those and then click the tab that says character sheet, that's where you can start writing all this stuff down. Here's the caveat. It's possible that the character sheet will look terrible for you when you open it. I have not completely finished coding these, but they look great on my screen. They just don't flex very well. If you're on a Windows machine, you might be able to like zoom in or out to get things to line up. I'm on a Mac laptop and it lines up great, but they're not flexible yet. So anyway, if they're not working for you at all, or just like convoluted and confusing, just say so, and I can kind of like point you to a PDF, or we can use some other thing. But well, here, let me just pull one up here, and I'll throw it in the screen share so we can all see. And if nothing else, we could work through these together that way. Here we go. All right, so this is what the character sheet's supposed to look like, at least. I don't know if it looks like this for you, but that's what it's supposed to look like. You've got a lead. They have a name. This one is called Another Lead Character. Underneath that's the sketch. The sketch is just kind of what we're saying. Like they're the mother of the archivist, and here's where their background is from, blah, blah, blah. They have an amount of vigor. They have some natures, narratives, and roots. They'll have one or two qualities, and they'll have an asset or two. Just by quick way of explanation, natures are an expression of who you are, your background, instincts, that sort of stuff. Narratives are what you want, what drives you, your goals. Roots are what grounds you, either as by way of a relationship or a memento or something like that. Your qualities are kind of the things that are more physically, mentally, emotionally expressive of who you are. Those will be things that have like +1, -1, and you'll roll out of your qualities when you roll. And your assets are the stuff that you have, and they'll have a rating between 1 and 4. When you make a roll of the dice, an action roll or whatever, you'll be able to add bonuses to it based on your assets, your qualities, and your natures. and those will help you succeed or fail, depending on which way they're getting invoked. So yeah, if you're working through one of the kind of sketches in the handouts, they kind of do a lot of this work for you, and I'd suggest that just because like it'll help us get through there. But if it's a square peg in a round hole situation, we're not going to force it. You know what I mean? Um, so maybe all right, you had mentioned something about the remnant maybe working for you. Um, if somebody wants to pick up one of these and we could maybe work through it collaboratively a little bit, at least to kind of get the hang of it, then we might. It's I guess what I'm saying is it's easiest to explain by doing. So if anybody wants to do, let's do.
I am fine being used as a guinea ferret.
Oh my gosh. So guinea ferret obviously makes me think of guinea pig, and that just a very quick tangent is uh, my now 4-year-old saw a like video of a guinea pig when I don't know he was like 2 or something, and I was like, "Look, buddy," and he like looks at it and he's like, "Pineapple kitty." I was like, wow, you completely nailed what that is. In a way that I really don't think I could have. Yeah, guinea pig, the pineapple kitties. So anyway, yeah, ferret, guinea ferret. Let's. I know, right, James? I felt the same way. Okay, so yeah, James, to answer your previous question, I'm just seeing Pres and UND. That stands for presence and understanding. If one of the things that I'll probably say a lot during our time together is, "What do you think it means?" and things like that, because we um, these things are malleable, right? They kind of mean something and they kind of just mean whatever they mean to you. If you hover over them, I don't know if that shows up in your on the screen now too, but these are old descriptions. Damn. Sorry. Don't hover over them because that will just add confusion. So let me just run down through them anyway, real quick. Agility and brawn, I feel like, are probably a little more self-explanatory. Deftness and dexterity with agility. Brawn is your physical frame and strength. Your focus is your ability to pay attention and focus on what's going on. That might be aiming. It might be looking for something. It might be whatever. Your guile is your wits, your cleverness, your sneak thievery, or you're trying to convince somebody, that sort of thing. Your presence is your closeness to other human beings, your general force of character and personality, stuff like that. Um, it might be your physical frame, it might be your nearness to someone, it might be empathy. It's how you interpret it. It's what you want it to be for your character. Oh, nice. Cool. And your understanding is your ability more to synthesize information, like what does this mean? You put it together. However, people use it sometimes for, oh, I totally get what you're going through. I understand. I'm with you. And it's more about what it means to your character and how you want to interpret it at the table. Yeah. So you can build your character however you want within those terms. We just have to understand what you mean by it. The rules are not strict, and they're also not meant to be catch-alls. Like, okay, I'm going to use my understanding now because I understand how to lift that heavy box. Um, what we want to know is, what does it mean to your character, and then we kind of work forward out of that. So anyway, those are your qualities. Your qualities are directly impacted by your natures. what I mean by that is, as a nature advances, let's say, are you all seeing this if I type, let's see, comforter? Oh, I'm not presenting. Sorry.
I was like, what are we looking at?
I've just been like presenting this the whole time and like clicking on the sheet and shit like that and like not sharing anything. Okay. Present to everyone. Okay, you see it now, right? Okay, great. I'm so sorry. Technology. All right. So here's the situation. You have a nature called comforter, okay? It starts out, say, rated +1 or -3, or +2, -2. Um, as you gain advancement points in your nature, when you get a full nature's track, that can move up. That's the way advancement works in this game is that your character advances as we see the advancement of their character. You know what I mean? Um, so as we see them engage with their natures or their narratives or their roots, we get a better sense for who they are. And as we get a better sense for who they are, so do they. And that enables who they are to have more weight and gravitas in this world. So, once their nature reaches above a +1 or above a +3 -1, it becomes integrated. It's just a part of who they are now. And when it becomes integrated, it's able to grant a bonus to one of their qualities. In this case, the player might choose that to become a bonus to to their presence. So when a nature reaches integrated, it gives a +1 to one of the qualities. However, conversely, those can move down the track as you amass conditions, kind of in this like Maslow's hierarchy of needs situation. When you've got all of these things going on in your life, these conditions that you're facing, you can't really reach that level of self-expression. So when your conditions track is full, meaning you've taken 4 degrees of conditions, whatever, hunger, thirst, shock, fear, doubt, whatever, um, those will move down and your condition track will clear. So if you've got one sitting here and your condition track fills, it goes down to becoming entrenched. It's now so much of a hindrance to your character that anytime they're acting out of, say, in this case, it would be the same thing, their presence, it would then go back down to 0 if that becomes entrenched. That's kind of how advancement works for natures, and um, that's a big part of the game. Is we want to see the expression of your character grow and diminish because of what happens. That's the lens through which we understand the fiction and we process it. Those natures can be anything. It can be from like an expression of who you are and where you're from. If you look at these handouts, the haunted, the remnant, the slinger, the spark, there are some example ones to pull from. That might give you an idea of what sort of thing. It's just a like you could almost think of it like a skill, but it's a skill that's tied to who you are. It's a skill that's born out of your you-ness. Okay. Um, and yeah, that's that. You I'll just kind of walk us through this as we go. But Ferret, do you want to take this character and kind of give us a sketch? And if the character sheet's not working for you, I'll kind of type it out as we go. Is everybody cool with that? I certainly don't want to stymie the like collaborative stuff too. Character creation is collaborative. It as we're playing a collaborative game, it doesn't make sense for it to be insular, right? It should all bounce off of each other. So, Ferret, this is going to be the character that it's the lead character that you're inhabiting and role playing out of. But we want that to be influenced by everybody here. so that we don't all just feel complete ownership of this, and this is our only perspective in the game. So maybe let's start with your sketch, or if there anywhere in particular you want to start.
I like sketch-wise. I'm thinking I like the previous archivist dethroned due to natural causes, age.
Debauchery.
Okay, debauchery it is.
Awesome. Previous archivist dethroned because of debauchery. Oh, you're gonna make me spell it.
I feel like debauchery might be something that happens to every archivist. What that looks like might be different, and maybe it's even a term that kind of gets misused by people. It's almost kind of like a political tool, like claiming this is debauchery when people might not think that it really is.
I love it.
And so, like, it just that's when they age out, is when they start debauching, as it were.
Love it.
Ooh, I love that.
The scary thing about that is you're giving 16-year-olds that much power and expecting them to not get up to debauchery.
This is
Yeah,
why
tell me about
this
it.
isn't called Hollywood at all. Don't worry.
Okay, cool. So we've got a sense of the previous archivist dethroned due to their debauchery, whatever that nature of that is. We don't know yet. Speaking of natures, do we have any ideas for the previous archivist?
I was looking at everything is worth something, but I now think it is either going to be if you draw blood, mean it, or sleep with one eye open.
Love it.
Maybe I'm open to.
Yeah, what do y'all want to see in play?
Both of those choices are so good.
Yeah, I like them both.
Yeah, I can kind of see them going in different directions. Like sleep with one eye open is like you're kind of paranoid and maybe a little bit jaded by what happened to you, and kind of like that sort of victim of politicization sense. The other one strikes me more as like maybe you started to be more active as an archivist, and that was part of what caused people to dislike you.
Yeah, I'm not good at paranoia, so I'll go with if you draw blood, mean it.
Okay, cool. And it doesn't have to be draw blood, right? Like we can mod that however you
Maybe
interpret it.
like instead of like draw blood, if you start a debate, finish it.
Love it. Yeah, that's great. And that's going to get
the king. If you come for the king, best not miss, right?
right. Yes. Yes. So we'll rate that as a +1 -3. That's where they all start. So meaning when you're using it to finish a debate that you started, and it's like a good thing that you're doing this, and we all kind of as a table decide like, yeah, this is in your favor here. You'll get a +1. However, if you are just relentlessly pursuing this debate that you started in order to finish it, and we all see that it's totally a hindrance, then that's going to be a -3 to whenever you roll. Okay? Cool. Yeah. So let's start with just that nature. Once we get. They are different. Yeah. So that we'll start with just one that is kind of insular, and then we're going to form some other natures and narratives and roots based out of some prompts later. So any of the roots on the kind of quick start remnant page jump out to you?
I like a lock of hair. I'll think I'll put like how about a instead of a lock of hair, a lacrimosa, LACRIMOSA,
Thank you.
filled with, or yeah,
Yeah, what is it?
lacrimosas are where you keep tears to pour on graves. Very
Oh God.
Victorian. I think like filled with the tears of my family from when I was chosen as the archivist.
God, that hits so
That's really
hard.
good.
Damn. So during, good Lord, I'm crying. That's so good. During the game kind of plays in phases of like a recovery phase and a venture phase. During a recovery phase, you have a chance to play scenes with these routes and stage a scene where you can engage with this route, and you'll either gain advancement points from it, or you can spend those advancement points that you have earned to fight your conditions and fight corruption and that sort of stuff. So yeah, that's great. We've got a nature and a route. I love it. The remnant has an asset listed there, which is an heirloom, I think is the idea.
An heirloom, a relic, or a memento.
Yeah.
Oh, this has to be like not an like a printout from the computer firing me from the position, or like some symbol of my debauchery.
Oh man. How does that work in your favor?
Oh yeah, you're right. Well, maybe instead of that, it's just the robes of the archivist. I got to keep the outfit, the ornamentation.
Yeah, that's great. And it's as there's a sort of a symbol of station and authority. I could totally see that coming into play for you. So you're also welcome to choose a waypoint from any of the journeys. That's listed in the journeys and waypoints handout. We'll probably let you just kind of scroll through those on your own and pick one that seems attractive to you, because it's not really the most like exciting collaborative stuff. It's just about like so if you were to say like I could see this character going down the journey of the hook or the point, and those are ones who are like focused on kind of verbal banter with the hook, or the point is more about strategery. Wow, good one. Strategy and leading and that sort of stuff. So I could see those kind of coming into play, and the waypoints that you might pick off of there would be ones that just help you break the rules in fun ways when you're trying to do those sorts of things. And they're all listed in that handout that's in your journal in Roll20 called Journeys and Waypoints. Peruse that at your leisure, everybody, while we do other character creation stuff with everybody else. Cool. So, last sort of thing that we need to figure out as we're doing character creation here for you. Let's maybe work through some of these prompts on the remnants. I'm gonna zoom in. Yeah, on the remnants. Kind of quick start here. We've kind of established that they were kind of dethroned uh, because of their debauchery. Let's maybe kind of hone in on that a little bit, or another aspect of that as we build some of their other elements. Here is the some of the quick start stuff from the remnant. The remnant represents someone who has lost something. Um, they were the connections to your past were destroyed or disbanded or disowned. there's actually some other quick start archetypes that I feel like would fit this better that just aren't finished enough yet for for me to bring in front of y'all. But we're getting really close, and I'm excited about that. Because I could see the faded is one that would absolutely suit this a little better. We'll use the remnant for now. So the remnant is about memories and about what used to be, right? Um, I could see these working for you, but if you're not feeling any of them, Ferret, don't feel obliged to take them. But what these sort of prompts on the right hand side of your screen are about is connecting you to the other leads and that sort of stuff. So I'm going to leave these up here for just a second. You can look over them, and then maybe once we have a few more bones from other folks, we can jump into some of these questions.
I also have the remnant in a PDF open, so feel free to go to someone else.
Sweet. Well, who wants to go next? Yeah, James, let's have it.
So I was thinking that I wanted to play a character that is the person who takes away and trains the archivists. So I trained Ferret's character, and I trained Jason's child when we took them away, and I was present when that child was chosen and taken as well. And I think that works with both some of the elements from the haunted and some of the elements from the sling.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally feeling that. Yeah, talk to me about this character. Let's also let's see. Does your previous archivist have a name yet?
I was just thinking about that. Give me a bit, and I'll be right back with that.
No problem. I'm just going to rename the sheet Ferret, and you can. Everyone has access to all of these sheets and editing capability on all of them. So feel free, if any of them make any sense to you all, to put them together. For now, let's hit James, and we'll do your character. I'm gonna just bring that up on the screen so everybody can see it.
Unfortunately, on my screen, it doesn't line up correctly because I'm using a Windows computer, but it mostly is there.
Mostly, yeah. I tried spinning it up on a Windows partition, and I got it like close if I could like zoom in and out the right way, but you know, I'm getting there. It's a work in progress. So anyway, hopefully by the next week I'll have these a little more flexible so that they line up on your screens. But for now, I can operate them for you. James, let's go with this sketch maybe first because it feels like you've got it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I train and advise the archivists on how to do their job. I prepare them for the knowledge that they will be taking in and the speaking that they will be doing to the public.
How are you able to do this? What's your experience? Were you the first? Were you imparted with some sort of special knowledge?
The oldest living archivist is chosen for the role until they retire.
Amazing. So another prior archivist. Love it.
As long as everyone's okay with that idea.
Any objections to that? No. Yeah. Cool.
It could also be the one whose debauchery was the least debauched.
Yeah, right. That's great too. Oh God, spelling. And the James, you said something about like the public, like the speeches they'll have to make, or something like that. I'm blanking on it. Can you remind me?
Honestly, whatever sounds like the best way to phrase that. Basically, public speaking training, because, like, you know, when the Oracle at Delphi would speak too, it was very specific. There were people that would kind of be like PR for the Oracle.
Yeah, totally.
So same thing there.
Nice. Yeah. So just the addressing of the public. And so that must mean that you yourself have some sort of idea of etiquette and rhetoric and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yes.
Love it. Do you have any ideas for some natures, or where do you want to start on your character?
So I think the angle I was wanting to go for was kind of a combination of the idea that I don't choose sides, a healer doesn't choose sides, an advisor doesn't choose sides,
Hmm.
and the idea that lies are simpler than the truth.
Oh,
So that I'm trying to kind of combine that in a way that makes sense to me.
That's a fascinating combination. I'm totally into that. Anybody have any thoughts on that?
Not so far. It sounds good to me.
I'm just kind of thinking being good at public speaking means being a little bit political, and lies are very political.
So yeah, lies are simpler than the truth feels like a very political statement,
Yeah.
right? So I could just see it being that, unless you have a twist on that or an interpretation of that, right? Like
Lies are simpler than choosing sides.
oh,
I kind of put it together at the last second there when you wrote that down.
perfect. Yes.
Yeah, I kind of love the sound of that too, because the whole idea that the archivist is supposed to be neutral and objective, you would think that that would just mean stating the truth, but it's actually, in your view, lying is the only way to do that. So that's pretty fascinating.
Totally. Yes. Wonderful. So lies are simpler than the truth. Are there any roots, assets, stuff like that stick out to you?
Not quite yet. I was looking at a few of them, and so many of them sound good that I'm kind of like lost for a minute.
Cool. Does someone else want to jump in then while James looks?
I could see like Knox, the root's called Knox, who is a reliable supplier. I kind of love the idea of being an archivist has almost like it's almost like something you have to like maintain even after you are no longer an archivist, like trigger warning for addiction, but like the idea of I'm totally blanking right now. What do you call it when like you are when you have not, like if you're addicted to heroin and you have not had it for a long time and you are
Like you're in withdrawal.
Withdrawal, yeah. Like I think there's like a sort of withdrawal thing that happens if it like even long after you're not an archivist, right? And that has to be like maintained, right? And maybe it's something archivists don't even speak about. So this is almost like illicit, right? I kind of like the idea of that.
Kind of like the idea too that it's actually like a life-threatening sort of withdrawal. So like you need to have this thing in order to keep you alive, because if you don't have it, then you're just going to die.
And I think it's really interesting if like that's something the archivist, especially this particular archivist who's like kind of a public relations person, does not talk about. Like it's a thing that like that the archivists don't, they don't talk about that effect on your body, right? Anyway, those are my thoughts.
Rule number 1 of Archivist Club is we don't talk about Archivist Club.
Precisely, yeah.
Especially because, with that lies are simpler than picking sides, I'm going to be comforting children that are afraid. I wouldn't want to tell them about all the terrible things they're about to deal with.
Yeah.
Maybe that root that I have is a stolen piece of the machine used to communicate. So that I have some form of still connection. And I sometimes steal more pieces of it, but my root is that one large piece that I stole the first time, maybe. Does that sound okay?
That's cool. It's almost like an auxiliary access port of some sort. So like you can kind of like listen to it every now and then, and maybe that's the fix. You need that that presence in your mind that you don't have anymore. If that sounds interesting.
It could be something like a new age flash drive that you stick in the computer. It gives you new information that you get to sift through. You can't do anything with it, but at least it's new.
Maybe that's the fix that the archivists need, is like new information. Yeah. Cool. So the route that you're proposing then, James, a stolen piece of the machine.
Yeah, I actually like that flash drive a little bit more than what I initially said. Like, Ferret, that's super cool. I like it. I like that I'm kind of stealing information from the machine. Like, please feed me more information again. I miss it.
Awesome. So a flash drive that's used to get the information fix you need from the machine. Well, hopefully hopefully you always have an access port for it, and you don't end up, leaving the forge. Can't imagine a situation where that might happen. Or the
What happens when we phase out Firewire?
Yeah, exactly. Quickly invents Wi-Fi.
So I can't actually see the sheet. Which one? Okay, there it is. So I guess the other thing would be the asset.
Yeah, here we go. Let me bring it back up on the screen here. The asset that you carry. It could be that same flash drive. Assets can be roots and vice versa. There's no problem with that. Or if you have a better idea for it, lay it on me.
I'm definitely thinking something similar that marks my status as the current current advisor archivist. Like Barrett kept his old ropes, and maybe I kept a large holy symbol, representing that, and I wear it on my neck.
Cool.
No Pope hat.
I don't like hats.
That's the thing. Like, you advise all of the up and coming archivists, like, no hats. They make you look stupid.
And no capes either.
No capes, right? Yeah, cool. So assets are given a rating. All of this stuff in character creation is going to balance out from some numbers that I will crunch with you. But basically, you will have a set amount of vigor, a certain amount of like pluses in qualities, a certain amount of rating in assets, and those will all and a certain number of like waypoints on journeys. Those all kind of add up to a certain number. I'm saying certain a lot, but we can hold off on giving it a rating right now if you want.
Yeah, I think I'm good with someone else taking the spotlight now and making their character. But I did have a quick question. Where is that handout that has those waypoints?
Yes, that's in the in Roll20 in the journal. It says journeys and waypoints under the handouts thing. So if you see in Roll20, the right hand sidebar where there's usually, it starts off as the chat window. The like second little icon over it looks like a newspaper. If you click that, you'll see characters and handouts. Under handouts, there's one that says journeys and waypoints, and it's just a PDF that's text only. Sweet. Oh yeah. Hey, thanks. Links. Good stuff. Okay, cool. Who wants to take the spotlight now and tell us about your character, your lead?
I can go. Chris, if you're cool with that. I was about to say playbook, but the character sheet thing that makes the most sense, I think, is probably the spark. Just because, like, I think my character kind of fundamentally disagrees with all of this, right? And so, yeah. So the sheet does not line up for me. So if you want to do mine as well, Jake, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. No problem. And obviously too, feel free to, if it feels square peg round hole, to be the spark. Like, these are just archetypes that one could play, that are meant to help generate some ideas. So they don't really.
I think the spark will be fine. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. And I think it would even be what I think would be even, so my idea, my concept, or the, what do we call it? The sketch is, I think that I've always had a problem with the machine and the hierarchy. And it was, as you might imagine, quite a big shock when my kid was chosen to be the new archivist, right? It was almost like a deep irony, almost like the machine was taunting me, right? So I think the basic idea is someone opposed to the machine, opposed to the hierarchy, opposed to the injustices of the whole system, whose kid gets taken to be the archivist, right?
Okay, that's brutal. I love it.
Yeah. So what's next?
If you have an idea for some natures or roots, or assets,
Yeah.
those are all good places to start.
I guess my initial idea for natures is, I kind of like the idea of, I could go with bring low the mighty. That's pretty good. It's pretty close to what I'm thinking here. Or blinded by hate or hurt. Or devotion, all three really.
Yeah, that all feels on brand.
Yeah. I mean, I'm probably leaning towards blinded by hate, hurt, or devotion, because I think, like, I think my immediate feelings that I'm in as a character is like just the fact that I absolutely detest this system, and what's more, I think there's something wrong with my kid, right? So
Yeah,
yeah,
totally. That feels really great to me, at least. Yeah. So yeah, blinded by hate, hurt, devotion.
and the blinded part of it might be that, like, I might actually, like, not be able to, because so we don't lose sight of, like, this sort of overarching story. There's this, like, terrible ancient thing happening, right? And
Yeah.
maybe I'm not able to see the connections. I'm not able to see, like, why my kid is important to this or whatever, right? So.
Yeah, totally. And again, like, this is going to come up in some ways good and in some ways bad. In some ways it's going to give you a boost, in some ways it's going to hold you back. This one feels like one of those ones that's going to mostly hold you back.
Mostly hold me back, yeah.
But those are the ones that I love to play myself.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, same here. I am a PBTA player from
Yeah.
way back. This is how I play games.
We're gonna fail forward. I love it. Yeah. Cool. Do you have an idea for a route or an asset for this character?
I'd be open to hearing the group's thoughts on the roots for sure.
It could be a memento of your child.
I like that.
Yeah, the last gift your child gave you before they were chosen.
I like that. I think I'd like for it to be a little bit. I like that, the idea of something from the child. I'd like for it to be something a little, like, more, maybe something a little more complicated. Like, maybe it's some kind of, maybe me and my child had a fight right before they were taken away, right?
Mm.
And the thing I have is like some kind of reminder that we did not leave on great terms, right?
Yeah, maybe they wrote
Oh.
you a note.
Or a
That
torn
Yeah.
scarf or something, like another item of clothing.
sure, yeah.
Or it's like
Yeah.
the last thing you took away something of theirs, like for punishment, and they never got it back.
Yeah, that's good. And I feel like we should probably know a little bit more about the kid at this point.
Yeah.
And what was so complicated about our relationship. I mean, I don't have any thoughts on whether it's a either a well, we said that they were taken when they were really young, right, or fairly young.
Yeah.
So, but I don't have any preferences in terms of like whether the kid is like a boy, a girl, or non-binary. I think like we'll just say a boy for now. I in my personal life, I have a lot of like issues with my dad, so I can really like I can tap into that right now.
Yay!
And it's not bleedy at all. I'm good. I've had lots of therapy to get over it. So maybe like it's my son, and I think it's just probably something as simple as like something real simple and dumb, like.
So I have an idea, actually.
Oh yeah, please, yeah.
So if they were taken away when they were very young, I could see it almost being just kind of like some sort of childish thing they did that you were disciplining them for. And maybe there was kind of this sense that when they left, the last image they have of you was of this like this monster, this domineering kind of. It might have just been very normal parenting or just like an angry outburst, but you just have this guilt because the last thing that they remember from you is that.
Yeah. And I guess the question is like, what's the thing there, or what is the
Maybe you threw away like a safety, like a stuffed animal or something like that, and you only were able to retrieve it from the trash.
Oh, that's pretty good. Maybe I thought like it was time for like him to grow up, right?
Mm.
It's time for you to grow up, and so I took like some toy away or whatever, and then the government took him away. So.
Karmic justice.
Exactly. So, I like that.
It's good.
Yeah, so we'll say my kid's toy. And how incredibly complicated is it that like, that's the thing where I find solace, right? Like
It's super complicated, yes.
freaks me, yeah. So I have a feeling this is a complicated character.
That's what we're here for. We're here to explore the messiness of the characters who inhabit our story. Yeah, I love that. Do you have an asset in mind? A thing that your character, kind of like their iconic thing that they rely on? If not,
so I'm reading the thing here. It says a time-worn implement entrusted to you to carry on this fight. Is that what we're talking about? Whatever this time-worn implement is?
I mean, if you want to take it in that direction. So that's more geared toward like the spark as a kind of firebrand and political.
I'm into that. I mean, I'm totally
yeah.
into it. I mean, that's kind of my feeling on it. I think it's just like time-worn implement entrusted you to carry on this fight. That's pretty good. Oh, I know. I got it. Oh, I've got it. I have like some code that takes this whole damn thing down. And I definitely can't because my kid is connected to it, right? Like, totally effed. But I have it. And I think it's like something that's been passed on by all the people in my sort of like who share my ideology, right? So we have this. We're just kind of waiting for our moment, right?
It could even be a Rogue One sort of thing where the person who designed this kind of was having second thoughts during, and so they built in the kind of the back door.
Yeah. I've got this like I'm gonna say it's like a sort of like maybe it's another. I got my own USB stick with a with like the bad code that will shut the machine down, right? So
all right, I love
allegedly. I also like the idea of it maybe not even being real, or like it's just a thing we believe, right? I'm equally into that. Like it may not even be like a legit thing. But.
Yeah, it's like it's been said that this is what it is, but we'll find out. You're probably not gonna try to put it in while the kid's hooked up to the computer. But who knows? I'm giving it a rating 4 just because that's at least the impression that we get of it, right? Like it's able to bring the whole hierarchy down. Yeah. I mean, just so a word about rating. A thing's rating is like just an assessment of its general effectiveness at the thing it's designed to do. So it doesn't mean that like a sword is more powerful than a pen. It means that a good pen is more powerful than a bad pen. So this code is, as codes go, the biggest and baddest code that you can get. Or so we think. There's also a way for us in the game to change its rating, and assets can be harmed as well. So its rating could go down if something happens to it. Cool. Love it. Big piece of code. Gonna bring the whole machine down. If only my kid wasn't attached to it. Speaking of that kid, we've got a complicated past, and I want to bring down the machine that they're a part of. That sounds all very... there's a lot to work with. There's a lot to work with there. That's great. That takes us to Chris, unless, Jason, there's anything else that you want to throw out there for now.
I'm good.
Awesome. Chris, lay it on us.
Okay. So I've got kind of two ideas. One is that if you guys want someone to play the Archivist, I'm willing to do that. If we feel like by this point we've kind of established some characters and what the world might be looking like, if we don't want that, I'm willing to go with something else.
I increasingly like the idea of someone playing the Archivist, if I'm being honest.
Okay.
Because I'm already kind of loving the potential for like that character is starting to feel pretty central to all of our stories, right? Like I can imagine lots of different scenes with all these other three characters. So
for sure. Yeah.
It'd be a shame if I had to play them. I'll say that.
Cool. Let's do it then.
Yeah. Okay. Chris is the Archivist.
Hey.
Chris, what's your sketch?
All right. Let me pull up the character sheet real quick.
Oh yeah, let me broadcast it here again.
Cool.
I've got you up. There we go. Chris the Archivist.
Cool. So the sketch I think begins with the Archivist. So we've established relatively young, like 16. Can't type. Chosen at a young age. I'm not even sure if they would have told me what the kind of qualifying things were, but somehow I was selected. Do this roll. As far as fleshing out the sketch more,
you got a complicated relationship with your dad.
Yeah, it almost feels like ancient history in a way. To me, because most of my life now has been separated.
Yeah, you were young. Yeah.
And so actually the complicating factor would be if he suddenly reappeared. Yeah. So I think too, something to be said then is like raised by the Forge, essentially.
And probably practically raised by James's character, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, since I would be advising and tutoring you, I would sort of like step in as that surrogate parent.
Yeah. What's your name? Character name?
That's a good question.
Cool. I'll just leave it blank.
Currently putting it in as James. Basically raised by James in parentheses. So.
Yep. Cool. Natures.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that's what's next. My instinct is to say there's always a compromise. The idea there being that kind of, and maybe this is a bit of a conflict between me and James's character. My sort of approach to being the objective neutral party is to try to sort of like keep everyone's interests in mind, which sometimes could probably get me into trouble too, I'd imagine.
Yeah, totally. I I feel that that pull as well. That nature of like always being the peacemaker or the one finding the compromise or something like that. Yeah. Is that the one? Is that the way you want it worded? There's always a compromise.
I think so. Yeah.
Cool.
I think that actually kind of plays well with my character's nature because I want to not choose sides and I kind of want those same kind of ideas just in very different ways. So different approaches to the same idea.
James probably had a much easier time with you than with me.
Can I ask again which little playbook thing this is?
I did not specify yet.
Okay. Sorry. Okay.
No worries. I actually was thinking the Spark 2, but like maybe a slightly different take on it. Because kind of being the archivist is kind of like, in a way, you're kind of the central figure in the conflict, for better or for worse. If that makes sense to y'all, we can always customize it a little bit.
Absolutely, yeah. I again, these are there to be kind of starter kits, and just to give you a sense for how you might play it. However you want to take it from there is great. All we really need these for is to get started.
Cool.
However we flesh them out is up to you.
Excellent.
So yeah, we've got the archivist who is, I feel like we all have a decent handle on who they are and what they're going through right now. I suppose like to what extent we don't know yet in terms of where we pick this up in the fiction. But they are kind of this peacemaker place of where they're trying to navigate the complications of this position and the people who are kind of above them but kind of behind them, and that sounds like a really tough place for a 16-year-old to be. And let's just go ahead and play Monster Hearts.
Machine Hearts, maybe.
Machine Hearts, yeah. Cool. Any other things you are feeling right now, Chris? Roots or assets wise?
So assets, I think a hat. No, I'm kidding.
Hat of disguise.
Roots. One idea actually that I wanted to share while I'm thinking of it is, as far as my name, I'm thinking actually that as long as you are the active archivist, maybe you don't have a name. Kind of the idea that you're sort of even stripping away your own identity in order to just be this kind of avatar figure.
That totally makes sense to me. Yeah.
So my title is just the archivist, and that's the only way people can refer to me because that's the only name I've got. And of course, when a dear old dad shows up again and starts calling me by my actual name, I might get some feathers might be ruffled, which will be fun.
That's excellent. Okay. Do you have any sense on some roots or assets kind of maybe born out of that complication? Or?
I think assets is maybe just like my key, my port, whatever we would call it, kind of like my access to the machine. It's basically just like it's my job, but it's also my source of power in a way. So I think that makes sense.
You can also just say like your holiness, or your sanctity.
Yeah. Yeah, I think maybe just my title even.
Oh yeah.
And then roots. I'm trying to think if there's something, and maybe you guys can help me out with this. Past having been pretty much stripped away, like my life kind of restarted when I started this training. So I'm trying to think if there's something that the archivist would be allowed to kind of keep as a sort of like personal token memento or something like that, or maybe something like shared between me and James's character. That's just something that's kind of like it's like my one sort of touch point with some personal relationship, which I don't really have much of anymore.
Like my archivist was allowed to keep the lacrimosa of like family tears.
Right.
So maybe you have like your mother's wedding ring, or like I'm assuming it'd be something more from the mother than the father, or The other husband, if that's how it was.
Or like half a toy that was clearly thrown in the trash.
The leg that got ripped off when
Or like a safety blanket. Or a family photo.
Okay, I've got two ideas. One kind of playing off of the joke earlier. Maybe it actually is a hat. It's just like an old straw hat, something that's like worn by, like they will be worn by people in our family. The other is like an old biscuit, like one of those that's like meant to like keep for a long time. Like it's just like literally never going to go bad. So I can't eat it obviously because I would just destroy my teeth. But maybe it's just like a kind of a piece of home cooking that I remember being terrible, but it's still kind of a symbol of home.
You mentioned wanting it to be something that kind of like that possibly you and James's character shared together. You know, I think that's an interesting angle actually. And so what if it's like something what I think would be like a really terrific like symmetry or echo of like our conflict is if when you became the archivist, James's character actually gave you something like kind of childlike or that like appeals to you, right?
So okay, I like that idea a lot.
Yeah.
Because maybe like, you know, a young enough age again that like kind of I do need some sort of like security blanket.
Mhm.
So they bought me a toy, and maybe you can like had like,
Yeah.
a huge array of toys I could have picked from. I picked like just the simplest one that's the most like my old toy.
Yeah.
So like they might be slightly different. So like, you know, the audience looking at the shot could see like this is the old one, this is the new one.
Right.
But they also look so close together that it's like
Yeah.
you can see the connection.
Yeah.
What might be interesting is that, you know, my character was also an archivist and they were taken away at a young age, and probably maybe it was a toy that I used to play with, and it was very similar by happenstance to the one you used to have.
Mhm.
So I gave that to you.
Ooh, I like that. I like that a lot. That's cool. Yeah, it has to be a pineapple kitty. That's the toy. Pineapple ferret.
Perfect. Yeah, it's all set and done. So the root is a it's a toy. Handed down to I'll say me.
A generational toy.
Yeah.
I think it was just I have to imagine like it was just something that like James's character gave to you to comfort you, right? Because you're being taken from home, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
totally. It's like I love that idea that's what's significant about it, right? That it's mundane except for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which implies relationship, which is what roots are about. Yeah.
Yeah, it does have a great symmetry to your point of the thing that was taken away from me by the old father. That's cool.
James, you said you had a name for your character. It's
Yeah.
what?
I put it on my sheet. I put in Frist.
Frist.
Oh, I see it. Yeah, great. Frist. So for this root, we'll say a toy given to me by Frist when I first came to this position. Obviously, feel free to edit that to your pleasure. Okay. It looks like we've got a half decent smattering of characters. We've got some threads for the story. We have a decent idea of what's going on here. Then the last thing that we kind of want to do for setup purposes is to like throw some threads together amongst you all. That's kind of what the questions are on the right hand side of your archetype sheet of your, what do we call them, threads, character threads. Things like especially that first one would be like, another lead was tangled up in your ignominious history. Another lead was there when everything changed. For the first time, another life was in your hands, and another lead was present, or another lead has always had your back. we want to hit those and then maybe take a break and bounce into some action, or do we want to take a break and then bounce into those?
I could go with the break now. I could use a bio break. So.
Yeah, I could also use a bio break.
Samesies. All right, sweet. Back in a few, we'll flesh out these characters in terms of their relationship to one another, which I think we already have a great idea about. We'll go from there. See you in a few. Welcome back. Those of you who are back. I have switched from coffee to wine, so it's about that time in the gameplay. We have a lot of pretty exciting potential narratives to jump down here, and both from a meta standpoint and from a character to character standpoint. I was thinking of some questions while we were on our break. One of the ones that like hit me first and foremost was like, why is Sander here? Is it Sander, Sandor, Sandra?
Sander. I lifted it from Sander Clegane from Game of Thrones. So.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, why is Sander here?
That's how I picture him also, by the way. BT dubs.
So. Why is he here? Has he been like summoned? Does he come on his own volition? Does he got a sense that something's up?
I think I heard that like there's something wrong with the machine, and like my kid might be harmed by it, and like that's kind of so I think I've come for that reason. I think I don't know if I have the code on me. That feels like a dangerous move, but I do have access to it if I need to. And yeah, so I think I'm definitely there just to like I'm there just to be like this sort of classic like angry ranting like kind of like not, I don't know if angry and ranting is the right way of putting it, but like I think I'm just there to like advocate for my son, be upset about all of this, but at the same time like also say I told you so, right? Like we've seen this coming, right? So
yeah, totally. And it feels like we've got a decent, at least for me, I feel like a sense of an opening scene kind of coming on here of that to me feels like the biggest complication, right? Is like, how has Sander come to have audience with these folks, and the what's going on there? To me, that's really interesting. Obviously, we can pick it up wherever we want, and we can set scenes here, there, and everywhere. You know, we don't have to jump completely linearly either. So yeah, question about that. We also talked about the archivist is kind of like tied to the computer in some way, and the computer is tied to this old god, and the archivist seems to have a lot of authority and a lot of like presence. Is there anyone above them that they report to? What are their duties like on a day to day? And maybe Chris, this would be for you to answer, or at least to start.
Yeah, so I kind of picture this as I'm not the government, the machine, and kind of like the more bureaucratic sense is the government. Probably we don't have like an actual like equivalent of a king or a president. It probably all kind of comes down to those interpreters. And so while I'm sort of the figurehead in the sense that I'm kind of passing on the word of the machine, as it were, I'm not in charge of acting on that. And so I do kind of, I'm not sure if report's quite the right word, but I do share this information with these people, and they probably try to influence me for better or for worse. But I'm not like, in a sense, like I'm not like reporting to someone aside from just kind of like knowing what my duties are, having guidance from Frist, and et cetera, et cetera.
Well, I think that's got to be part of the corruption, right? Like part of the corruption has got to be that like you say what the machine wants everyone to know, but the people who are supposed to be like interpreting what you're saying are interpreting it like in bad faith sometimes, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Totally into that. All of that, and lots of good stuff there. Cool. Questions that maybe we want to bounce off of each other. Machine says buy war bonds. shop at by and large. The questions that we might want to bounce off of each other to kind of help flesh out your interconnections. Obviously, like, we have a strong sense of like what these connections look like on paper or loosely. Maybe we can go into defining them a little better and see if we can't kind of establish some personal narratives for your characters, or other roots or natures and that sort of thing. So that's what the right hand side of those character archetype sheets are about. If anything in there jumped out to you, I'd love to hear it. Otherwise, we can just start kind of spitballing some things. I think first what I want to touch on is like any one of you who's one other lead character in this story that you're connected to. What did they either teach you? What do they need from you? Or how is that relationship important to you? And we can write a narrative nature or root out of that. We don't have any narratives in play yet, and that would be a good thing to start building because those are the things that you're acting out of. So
I have an idea for one of those with Frist and Dillarama. Maybe something that I needed from Dillarama was tarnished because of the debauchery. I needed you to uphold my reputation as the advisor, and your debauchery tarnished my reputation now. How does that sound to you?
I like that because I was thinking that Dilarama was one of the like youngest burnout, and she could I'm trying to go they them with Dilarama, is that they burned out fast. They might have been your first student too.
Ooh, that I like that. Because that adds some complication for both our reputations.
okay, cool. So this is feeling like it's going to either a nature's or roots place. Like there was either something, Dilarama, that you learned, or like a kind of coping mechanism you developed because of this, or it's become a core relationship because of this. Or I could see it the other way for Frist, like as a narrative almost to like not make the same mistakes again, or do better by the archivist who is the current one, Chris's archivist, or something like that, do you feel motivated by this? Like, does this feel like a personal failure to Frist, or is it?
Oh, absolutely. My first student is the youngest burnout. That's a pretty big deal, especially when I was a well-respected archivist in my time, and I was one of the longer-lasting archivists. My first student, when I'm teaching someone the ropes, burns out the fastest. That's a personal failing that would really shake Frist really hard and probably reinforce some negative traits in a relationship with the current archivist as well. Because I'm going to be a lot harder on this archivist. I'm going to be a lot stricter on this archivist. I'm going to work a lot harder to make sure that they do the right things, that they don't burn out, to make sure that they are the best archivist ever to make up for the one that I feel is my failure. And that's probably going to put a lot of strain in the way that I interact with Dilarama as well. Because now I'm treating Dilarama like they are my failure, and that's pretty weighty, I think. How do you feel about that, Ferret?
I like it, and I was thinking, like, I think when I debauched, or when it came to the public's eye, that's when Dilarama was left paralyzed. And I'm thinking, like, maybe you have something of that type. Like, maybe you have the bullet casing of, like, when Dilarama was shot. Or, like, even if we want to go to, like, Aeon Flux it a bit, like, or, like, maybe you just, like, I'm thinking, like, as nature-wise, I want Dilarama to have learned lies are never okay.
Oh gosh, both of these are really good. So the root that I have and the nature that you gained, those are so cool. Um,
Yeah, love that.
Or
So
you could just like you could keep a vial of the drug I debauched on. Just a reminder.
so we're thinking. Oh, sorry, I've got too many of these open. We're thinking for dialorama a new nature. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
Cool, cool. And that new nature is
Lies are never called for.
all right. The lies are never called for nature. You're gonna go in a +or -2 slot.
Yes.
That's usually where we do the second one in. Obviously, it's a sort of thing that can be sometimes helpful and it's about as equally good as it is bad for you. um, cool. And Frist was you were talking about a new route, is that right?
yeah, a route, something that, from that time where Dialorama debauched or was shot. I'm not sure which.
Oh, maybe you have like a piece of jewelry from the person that debauched me.
Ooh, oh, I like that. I have something that the person that debauched you left behind. That's good.
Yes.
And I hold on to that to remind me of my shame in letting this happen.
It is not a hat.
it's a fedora.
Maybe it's a ring.
There are a lot of Chekhov's hats in this setup so far.
It's gonna go off by the third act.
It could have been your debaucher's wedding ring.
Oh,
That's why it was so bad. They were married.
Exactly. I love it.
The Botcher's wedding ring. All right. Obviously, feel free to edit that if you like. Anybody?
No, I like it.
All right. All right. So we've got another route, a flash drive, and a wedding ring that doesn't belong to any of you, but was left behind. Gosh, that makes it sound like nothing good came of that person who lifted the lid on that situation. And a new nature for. I just keep wanting to say diorama. Sorry. I'm totally blanking on it. Diorama. Cool. Anybody else have another nature, root, or narrative that they're feeling out of this? And it doesn't have to be, um, tied to the pre-made sheets you have at all. But if you, in terms of narratives, if you feel like there's just something that my character super cares about seeing happen, that's what we want to see.
I've got a narrative on the sheet that I am using. I don't know, so just explain to me, Jake, do these all the sort of big category things on mine, it does not seem like they should match up with the other characters because I'm so on the outs of everybody else at this point. But I do like the one that says, your grandmother used to tell you stories about the world before. What about the world do you seek to restore today? Right. And because I feel like it hints at what I'm fighting for, right? Essentially. Does that make sense? So I don't know how does it have to connect up with another character, or can I just
it does not have to at all. No.
Okay, all right. In that case, I would like to suggest that the people who share my ideology I think that we are essentially we're essentially revanchists, right? We or Luddites. The world before there was not the machine. And what happened was that we kind of I like to suggest that like we lost everything. Like at some point we had a fabulous civilization and something happened and we lost it all and we forgot.
Yeah.
And so the machine was a way of remembering everything we built now, right? And
The machine meaning like the computer, the history, the archivists and that sort of stuff.
right, yeah, like the machine, that's like that only exists because we have this like sort of historical trauma where we forgot everything because of some calamity, right?
Mhm.
Because we didn't write things down, or we didn't like have a good system of like keeping track of everything, right?
The elder god is dead and we killed him.
Yeah, exactly, precisely. Yeah, like and so basically, I think that like my ideology is like this. It's like halcyonic. Like I want to go back to this time before there was the hierarchy, before there was the computer, like where it was just much more pastoral and like like kind of thing. It may not be realistic, and I'm sure I'm totally kind of like the MAGAs of today. I'm kind of totally forgetting like the bad shit from that time, right? Or I'm not, or it's being glossed over. But I believe strongly that it was purer than what we have now, right?
Super cool. What's a narrative that you have out of that then?
Sorry. Oh, so I think that it is. Well, just kind of remind me what these do mechanically. These narratives, like what are they
These
exactly?
narratives just kind of serve to they're like XP triggers in a sense. They're
Oh,
like
got it.
as you work toward these narratives, when we do the like recount phase where we talk about like, okay, that session just happened. Did we all hit
Mhm.
these things? You'll
Oh,
gain
got it. Okay.
advancement points toward it. So
I think my narrative would be something like tell a story about the world before.
love it. That's great. Great. Anybody else have a narrative that's jumping out to them for their character?
So I think also looking at the spark, it's all I've ever known. The little descriptor here says there's something to be said for routine, however grim. What instinct or outlook has this life of leading the charge granted you? And basically, I was chosen for this task. I've been raised up to do this job. It's what I do day in and day out. I don't really know anything else beyond that. And so I'm trying to sort of like put into words the outlook that I have as a result of it. It's almost just like my duty is my life, and I don't have a life that informs how I feel about my duty, if that makes sense.
It makes a lot of complicated sense, yeah.
So in a way, I like am and am not very kind of susceptible to influence. I hear every influence and then I have to process it in a certain way, but I don't have any sort of personal bias necessarily that makes me like lean one way or the other. And so I kind of feel aimless, I think, a lot of times.
Yeah, aimless would be like a half decent like nature.
Mhm.
If you're feeling a nature. If there's I'd love to get a sense for what the archivist narratives are. Like
Mhm.
the archivist who is meant to be this like incredibly neutral figure. What is it that they actually want?
Mhm.
And can they even ever say it, you know?
Mhm.
But yeah, in terms of natures, do you want to go with aimlessness for plus or minus 2? I don't know actually how that would come up as a plus 2.
Yeah, actually, I am kind of thinking I want to try to turn it into a narrative.
Okay, cool.
And like I said, there is one here under the spark that says it's all I've ever known.
Yeah.
I guess I just need to figure out the answer to this question.
Mhm.
So what instinct or outlook has this life of leading the charge granted you? Give me a moment to think about that. I'll come back to you.
Absolutely, yeah. So just to expand on this a little bit, narratives can be like, well, any number of things, but they generally fall into kind of like two main categories. There's like narratives that are about like what we want to see your character doing, like Jason's, like telling a story about the world before. That's a narrative. They can also be narratives that we want to see them becoming, like to learn to let go of blah blah blah, to grow in my understanding of X, Y, Z, or the other.
I think I have a interesting one. Serve a system that has failed you. Because, I mean, I have a character who is now paralyzed from the waist down. She kind of needs the machine, even though it has failed her.
Damn. Yeah. That's an intense between place to be. I could see. So the narrative is maybe not necessarily.
Serve. But
Maybe not necessarily to serve, but like the struggle to serve a machine that has failed you, a system that has failed you.
a struggle to find truth or struggle to find purpose.
Well, I love what you're talking about with like the that kind of like dichotomy between like this
Yeah.
reliance on something that has inherently let you down. Like that's, I think there's a lot of interesting play in that. So it's just however you want to word it from within there. If there's a goal or a personal development thing that we want to see in you, maybe that's like accepting that or letting or pushing that away, like that, like what would happen if this character just completely turned their back on this thing that is very much like giving them, uh, a different level of ability in life. So I guess to me the narrative feels like it's about that, like from a mechanical standpoint, your character might gain advancement points as they explore the gray area and struggle between being a part of this machine and it having failed them, which I think is perfectly valid.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out how to word it.
Cool. Anybody have any thoughts on that?
Maybe like biting the hand that feeds or something like that. Or maybe even the opposite of that, whatever that would be.
Feeding the hand that bites.
I like that.
Cool. For now, I'm just going to put in here that we want to see this like how do we serve a system that has failed us, which is I think back closer to your original point. Yeah, fair. So then we're kind of setting this stall out for you as you role play to explore these themes, like.
Yes, exactly.
And if that feels like something you're excited about and you want to do, then it's a good narrative. And if it's something that you feel like that's not really going to come up, then it's not.
I definitely think that she's going to be troubled to where her loyalties lie.
Great. That sounds beautifully complex. Okay, cool. So got some narratives, got some roots, got some natures. I think at this point, Dalarama, you're really close to having fleshed out this character all the way. Do you have a sense of what their qualities or any waypoints on any journeys that they might have? Because then this one is pretty much in the books.
I really like lies, deception from the hook, or ear to the ground from the hook.
Cool. So you're feeling a hook waypoint.
Very much so.
Okay. So the hook, and you can take more than one too. You could take them both. It's just going to affect like how much vigor your character has and what other qualities they have, stuff like that. Like basically, just to throw it all out here, from a like we're starting with no pre-made anything. It's like every character starts with 5 vigor. They start with one quality at a +1, one quality at a -1, and then they have 10 points to spend. Um, and those points can be spent on like that and points and more vigor. I suppose it's the titular stat of the game. I might want to explain what vigor is. Um, but
I was wondering.
Yeah, I was gonna ask too.
Yeah, well, hey, this is a great place to do that. Vigor is your force of character, your moxie, your je ne sais quoi, your certain something that you bring to the party. It's the way that you put something extra into what you're doing. Um, it serves a lot of purposes in the game. One is that it helps you to your zhuzh, yes. It helps you to overcome the odds. The odds are something that we assess when we roll. So like in Vigor, you roll 2d6. How we interpret those is based on the odds. Kind of like an advantage, disadvantage sort of thing. But basically your odds are either slim, roll 2d6 and keep the lowest, fair, roll 2d6 and keep the higher, promising, roll 2d6 and add them together. And then we judge that result on a tiers of success. So vigor can be spent to overcome the odds, as in to change the situation, showing that you're putting a little extra something into it. Vigor is also spent to activate some waypoints. Certain ones say like spend 1 vigor to do this instead of the normal thing. But it's also how you can do something that we call change the narrative, which is something's happening, you've made an action roll, and here's the result that's coming to you. You can change the narrative by making a roll, what we call against the odds. And then everyone has to start singing Phil Collins, which is always relevant. And you are basically able to spend vigor to work your way up through these tiers of success. The tiers of success are largely based out of fictional prompts, and they start at no and, as in you don't do what you were trying to do and something else bad happens. No, but you don't do what you do, but you get somewhere. Yes, but yes, you do it. It's a weak hit. Yes, you do it, but there's a complication. Yes, you do it, and yes, and so they're all based around role play prompts. If you hit like a no and, like just do that, and the cost is going to be your corrupt. Oh, break. Okay.
Just give it a second, see if it kind of evens out. You also might, if you just like lower your bandwidth on the call, that sometimes helps too.
Okay. Do you have me?
I can hear you now.
That's excellent news. Happens and you're like, oh God, no, I don't want that to happen. You can change the narrative to work your way back up through the tiers of success. And what you risk is draining your vigor or taking corruption, meaning like you're overreaching your power and corruption is bound to get wind of that. So anyway, vigor can help you overcome the odds. It can help you change the narrative, and it can activate certain waypoints and protect you effectively. Mechanically. Narratively, it represents all those things that I first mentioned. Your force of character. And there are some points where I might ask you to make a vigor check, which is just basically like kind of like a sanity check in like a Call of Cthulhu sort of situation where you would have to roll under your current vigor. And if you're too low, bad stuff happens, that sort of thing. Cool. All right.
I think I can make this very easy.
Let's do it.
I was looking at the sketch of the upstart merchant, and
Cool.
I was thinking of, I mean, that would apply the stats and the vigor. It'd be 5 vigor, plus 1 guidance or guile, plus 1 understanding, minus 1 brawn, and then 2 journeys or 2 waypoints.
Cool.
Okay.
Right. Can you hit me with that again? Was that figure?
5 vigor, minus 1 brawn, plus 1 guile, plus 1 understanding.
Cool. And then
And,
you're going to take 2 waypoints on the journey of the hook.
I'm going to take lies and deception from the hook, and ready aid from the fold.
Okay, cool. So lies and deception gives you improved odds, right? Is that like +1 odds
If I
when you're
change the narrative to look through deception, lies, skullduggery, my guile and understanding are better.
great?
And ready aid, I can help someone without spending vigor once per cycle.
Sweet. Yeah. Excellent. So that's Dalarama. Someone who quick-witted and able to synthesize information well, talking and protecting. That sounds totally like you. Nice. Okay. Anybody else feeling like fleshing their character out the rest of the way? Need more information, that sort of stuff.
I think I've got a few ideas bouncing around that I can kind of build on, since all of our characters are so closely woven already.
Yeah.
So one of the things I was thinking was definitely a second nature, and it would be in regards to training my new students. So,
yeah. What are you feeling on that front?
I'm trying to think of a way to phrase it, because it's kind of hard to distill into a punchy sentence at the moment for me. Because I was thinking about it for like 10 minutes, and now I can't find any of the words I was trying to use. So I was thinking about the strictness, like valuing behaving more than anything else, valuing propriety more than anything else, because of what happened with Dilarama. So, trying to think of a way to say it. Because it is an obsession with the past, but
Yeah, but it's about how you interpret that in
Yeah.
your actions now. Yeah, I feel that. So let's see. Is it something? I mean, obviously, throw this out if this isn't down the right path. But is it something like not making the same mistakes twice?
Definitely yes. It's a very specific way of doing it.
Yeah.
So,
maybe your nature would be like to make sure that the proper etiquette is observed, or is that a little colder?
it's definitely something to do with the rigid study or training, like under the haunted. So I definitely want to use that with something else.
Cool. I'm feeling that. It can be as generic as rigid study or training for right now, and you can flesh it out as we play.
Yeah, I know exactly what I want to say, but I don't know how to say it in words right now. I have the idea and it's in my head and I can't. Sorry, I thought I was more ready than I was.
Let's let up and play it. Yeah. Yeah. Let's,
Maybe it's more of a narrative, and that's why I'm struggling to phrase it into a nature. That might be what it is. Because this is something that he wants to never happen again, not something inherent to their person. So maybe it's I must ensure the same mistakes are never repeated as a narrative, because that sounds more narrative than nature. I think I had that backwards. I'm sorry.
No, that sounds perfect. Yeah, no need to apologize. You got it. This is all part of the process, right? We figure out where all the pieces fit as we build them. So yeah, can you say that back to me one more time? Your narrative that you're thinking.
I'm stealing Ferret's phrasing because that's perfect. I must ensure the best future.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Oof, it's like vague enough and specific enough. That's great.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Okay. So you've got a narrative to ensure the best future. Whatever that means to you. And do you have a sense of like what qualities your lead has? Like, is Frist more of a?
I was thinking about a connection possibly to Jason's character, because of the fact that I took their child away.
Yeah, you would have been there.
And I was thinking about the fact that I was one of the people that chose their child and stole their child from them. What do you think that might be good use there?
I mean, how complicated do we want to go here? Because I love an emotionally complicated thing, if it's not obvious by now. So I like the idea of so we're filling in what's the bit that we're filling in right now? Like this is to connect us to create what now? I want to make sure I understand like what we're doing before I throw this idea out there.
So I'm just kind of getting a feel for how our characters interact, and I might use that where it makes sense. That's kind of
Got
where
it.
I'm thinking.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Okay, so then you'll use that to generate one of the things. Okay, got
Yeah.
it. I think it would be extra complicated and interesting if we had a romantic relationship prior to. I think that would be great. Like some kind of like just some kind of relationship of like some kind of close relationship, an intimate relationship before you took my kid and made them your kid. So
Yeah. This could have actually been our kid too.
it could. I think I prefer it. I would prefer it to be like more I don't know, like more I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't. I mean, I think I like the idea of it. Like maybe we just maybe I have like enough reason to like whether incorrect or not, like whether I'm right or not. I think I maybe like I dually blame you because I feel like you were using me to get to the kid as well, even if that's not true.
Oh, I like
kinda,
that.
I kind of feel that, you know? And so like it's extra complicated because so not only did you like just usurp functionally parental duties of my kid and take them away from me, and not only do you so let me back up. I already felt really had complicated feelings having a relationship with you, considering you are central to this thing that I hate, right? So there's already that. And then on top of it, you just let me know one day, oh, by the way, your kid, whose name I keep forgetting, is the new archivist. Right? You know? Like it's very it's like super complex. Yeah.
We date for like 2 years, and I'm like, by the way, I need your kid.
Like, also, I know it seems like a weird coincidence. It really is, but yeah.
Oh my gosh, especially because I already have this background where like I will lie to people. This definitely feels like it could be something like where it's not sure if I was manipulative or not to you.
I like the idea of like out of character, we know it wasn't a lie. I just believe it was, right?
Yeah, no, out of character, this was sincere on both our parts. But in character, it totally seems like something, you know, this scheming bastard would do.
Like, exactly. Yeah. Because it just reinforces my narrative already, right? Of like how I feel about the hierarchy, right? So
this I reminds me a bit of like the Dalai Lama, like when they come to test kids from villages or cities or things like that, like where they test, grand parties are thrown, celebrations like that. Maybe like they brought rejuvenation to this village, and the relationship happened, and then it's like just one day we'll go, yeah, by the way, your kid's the archivist.
And
if you say no, all of this goes away.
So this actually makes me feel like this could be a really, really good, like super petty narrative point for me. Like maybe I really miss you. Like I genuinely loved you, so I really miss you. Maybe one of my goals, one of my things with ensuring the best future is like if I make this kid like the best archivist that's ever happened, maybe you'll forgive me. Maybe one of my narrative goals is win back my past.
Well, I love the idea of like you thought that this was all going to be great. Like, oh well, you can just all come live in the Archivist Palace or whatever. It's going to be awesome. And I was like, no, that's not how this works.
So I guess we did play Monster Hearts for a little bit.
It's all Monster Hearts.
I will always play Monster Hearts in every game, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's great. And I mean, our hope is that this game supports those more emotional connections, you know, and stuff like that. Like that's very much what we are about. We're about the players. We're about the people. So yeah, that sounds great. James, I think I'm totally into. Do you want to do a narrative that's to win back your past love?
Yes, absolutely.
Great.
I think it fits really well.
Great. And Jason, are you interested in taking a route maybe, or some other connection or nature or narrative out of this? Maybe like before.
I think is there anything I need on my sheet? Like I don't have it in front of me. Is there something that like I have to fill in?
Let's see. You have like one of everything, and that's
Okay.
a fine place to start. If you
Okay.
feel like fleshing that out anymore, you can. I mean, so right now you've got a connection as a root with your child and their toy. You've
Yeah.
got this devotion, hurt, and hate kind of toward the
Let's go
hierarchy.
with nature.
Okay.
And nature is explain to someone that love isn't worth it.
Ooh,
I think
ouch.
that's more of a narrative, I think, than a nature.
Oh, sorry, that's what I meant. Yeah, the thing that like you, yeah, the narrative. Sorry.
That's so great. Oh yeah. No, I mean it just isn't,
This
right?
is always the game I will play. I don't care what the setting is. I don't care like what the pretense is. This is the game I will always do. So.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, again, the game's about the people. So
Yeah.
the fiction is the trappings through which we tell these interpersonal stories. Love it. Yes. Love isn't worth it. The world before is beautiful.
Yeah.
All of this currently sucks.
So I think I want to take a +1 in understanding and a -1 in agility. Is never very good with things, very clumsy. That can be a couple metaphorical things as well.
Yeah, absolutely great. Okay, so you've got a +1 to agility, or sorry, a +1 to understanding, -1 to agility.
I'm not sure what the other point spend is exactly for that math.
Let's see. Well, we haven't assigned you any rating to your asset yet. Right now, you have 10 points to spend. I guess just to throw it out there, let me put it in the chat here. 10 points to spend.
Okay.
A waypoint costs 2.
All right.
Asset rating and vigor 1 to 1. A +1 in a quality is 3. And those are the things basically that you can spend those 10 points on.
Okay. I guess that asset would be a 3. I want vigor at a 5 as well. And
Okay.
then I guess the waypoint that I'd want to take is probably from the fold actually. I actually really like the idea of this character having deeper roots as their waypoint.
Cool. Yeah. Deeper roots is a waypoint that basically increases your capacity to be effective with your roots.
Yeah. And I also just like the flavor of that as well.
Yeah.
The other thing is I did have a nature that I wanted to add to him, or them,
Yeah.
I guess, because I'm not sure. I think they is where I want to be.
Cool.
And I will do that in a little bit because I'm still thinking about it, and I would like someone else to go.
Yeah. So, just to clarify, your +1 -1 is free in your qualities, and then you've currently spent just 5 of your 10 points because your vigor also starts at 5. Oh yeah. This was slated for 3 to 4 hours, so I'm totally good to like wrap as we finish character creation. That seems like a good natural break for us. If folks wanted to get into some action, I'm also fine to stay with that. But it's a lot of creating, and it's a decent natural break. Give us a week to plot and plan and come back to the action fresh. Cool. Everybody else cool with that? We'll just kind of finish up any characters. And Roll20 is obviously well, open to you if I can get the character sheets to look right to you. But the long and short of it is we can be in touch via email or Slack or whatever throughout the week if you want to flesh out your characters that way as well. But right now we've got a lot of cool things. It's just a matter of wrapping up kind of the numbers of it, and then we'll jump past. Sweet. So James, I'll let you think on any of those other things you want to spend points on. And we can come back to that. If someone else is feeling like fleshing out the character, or if we're feeling like this seems like a good place to call it, and we'll get back to it next week. That is also cool.
I think I could probably fill out a little bit more.
Okay.
So as far as choosing a sketch and all that fun stuff, I'm thinking Peacemaker. And then under that, I'll go ahead and take, I guess I get like all three of these things, +1 presence, +1 understanding, -1 guile.
Mhm.
Cool. And then I just pick one waypoint from either fold or hook.
Yep.
Cool. I think I'm going to go with lies, deception. Just the idea being that I have been taught by a really good liar, and I'm good at picking out who's lying and who's not.
That's great. You guys have the same waypoint, which is kind of adorable.
Excellent.
Yeah. Great. What's the vigor listed beside that one?
I think 8.
Yeah, just a little hex with a vigor symbol and a number in it.
Excellent.
Cool. And hit me with those qualities again.
The qualities are +1 presence, +1 understanding, -1 guile.
Got it. Cool.
And then I gave a little bit of thought to my narrative, and let me know if this makes sense for what you're thinking. I have kind of like this conflicted ideology, I think, where on the one hand, I'm a little bit wary of all of these kind of cliques like we talked about that try to interpret the machine in different ways.
Mhm.
And what I kind of want people to do, which I realize like I don't really speak this desire out loud because it'd be a little bit blasphemous maybe, is for each individual to be able to interpret the word of the machine in their own way, and not just kind of groupthink with whoever's kind of leading that clique. But on the other hand, I also have this goal of keeping the peace. So it's like I want everyone to be able to think freely, but all like we can fight and we can have disagreements, but like let's all just kind of like live together and have peace and et cetera, et cetera. And those are like kind of two things that don't seem to go together in the real world from what I've seen.
Yeah.
So maybe the name for the narrative is something along the lines of like troubled idealism or something like that, or like can I achieve this ideal or something like that. I'm not sure exactly how to phrase it for the narrative.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In narrative terms, I feel like we could play with this tension between being the peacemaker and wanting, if I'm getting what you were saying, wanting to see everyone kind of being themselves and expressing their own, like, so you're kind of torn. It feels to me like you're kind of torn between this, like, wanting for everyone to go their own way and be their freest, truest self, but also for that not to really cause conflicts.
Right. Or maybe to put it a slightly different way is I want like total intellectual freedom for individuals. But then what happens when that intellectual freedom means that they are so fundamentally opposed to someone else, they have to resort to like, I don't know, violence or any other sort of like limiting of the other person's freedom to think, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think what's a little tricky on this one is it feels really in between. It could be a nature, it could be a narrative. You know, like the nature side of it is that feeling of like that people should be free to make their own choices. That like narrative side of it is like to free people in a sense to think for themselves.
Yeah, like can I liberate people without destroying the world? In a sense.
Yeah, that's a complicated one, right? Like the narrative of like, oh, that's great for the archivist to have this narrative of like to espouse liberty and responsibility. Yeah. Can the archivist like encourage people toward freedom when they are just the mouthpiece for this machine? But this narrative is about like what you as a person want and what you want to see. So I feel like you should lean, obviously, just my opinion, I feel like you should lean into the like, as you're taking up that kind of spark role as well, like lean into the like tearing down of the system and freeing people's minds and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I like that. Because in a way, I guess what I'm kind of doing is I'm being one of those clique leaders. But I'm not really allowed to be. So
yeah,
like kind of forming my own ideology without making it look like I'm doing that.
Okay, yeah. That feels great. Like form, let's see. Gosh, it's a complicated thing to put into words, right? Which is a tricky bit. But
usher in an age of enlightenment.
Yeah, and I mean like maybe just narrowing down or pulling back to a little more attainable goal from that like would be to like
so maybe here's a thought. Sort of like plant the seeds of an idea essentially that's not being given to people by the cliques. If that makes sense, to kind of like I am conveying a message kind of under the radar in a way, hoping to sort of like reach people through my words and the way that they interpret them and not the way they're being interpreted.
Cool. So like you are kind of thinking like plant the seeds of I don't know if you'd go so far as revolution, but like plant the seeds of revolution.
We can call it revolution because like, you know, even if I'm not thinking like a literal like overthrow of the government, I am thinking of, and even if my character wouldn't put in these words, I am thinking like intellectual revolution.
Yeah, totally feeling that. So we'll just call it that for now. Plant the seeds of revolution. Clandestinely.
Sneaky.
Subtly. Oh, come on, spell. Subtly. Cool. And then yeah, that character is pretty well complete. You've got a root, a narrative, and a nature. You've got qualities, assets, waypoints, and vigor. You can play the game. You are allowed.
I will try.
Who else do we have to wrap? Do we just need to wrap James and Jason? Or is that where we are?
What needs to be done still on Sanders' sheet? I'm looking at it right now.
See. We need so first of all, you don't have to have any of these things necessarily. You'll need to have some vigor because it represents your, like,
yeah. Oh, assigning the points is the last thing.
Yeah, basically.
Oh, I can just do that before next week. That's fine
Yeah.
if I know how many I have. So yeah.
Totes. Yeah, I'll push a actual like doc into the Roll20 game here, where you can read. It'll just be a PDF that says like, for character creation, here's your points to spend. You can spend it on these things, and you can do that on your own time. We've got kind of the main things that we need to really collaborate on, which is our connections, narratives, roots, and natures. Your roleplay prompts.
I was able to figure out how I wanted to say my nature currently, and I wrote it in for now, and I did change my waypoints.
Cool. What do you got?
So I put for my nature, serve them your whole heart.
Oh, that's so
Um,
good.
Very, very, very sincere, that sincerity. And it's kind of to invoke the feeling of serving them with your whole heart as well, like serving as much as giving emotionally always. And it makes it easier for you to be believed too. So it works, I think, with the other nature we have. And I did change to 2 waypoints with the hook. And I spent my last 3 on a point in presence or presentation.
Perfect. That's great. Yeah. Excellent. Cool. So yeah, Jason, if you just want to kind of throw in some of those other things before next week, I think we're all in a pretty good spot.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind having a little more time to read through the waypoints a little more
Yeah,
closely.
absolutely. Take your time. We've got a week, and we'll dive into it. Here's the one thing I think that I want to leave us on before we break is Chris, you mentioned like the archivist passes on the word of the machine, right? What's the word of the machine that has started this whole mess?
Give me a second to think about that.
It's a question to everyone. So in my here's this like opening here's the opening scene of the movie in our heads, right? Is like I'm kind of almost seeing this like very primitive looking screen, and the archivist is interfaced with it, and these like flood of numbers and digits are just kind of like washing over them, right? Like they're currently having information basically from them to the computer as the archive, right? When suddenly it just kind of grinds to a halt and the letters and numbers on the screen reconfigure into like a phrase.
I'm thinking maybe not these exact words, but something along the lines of, you are architecting your own destruction.
Just ignore my chat. I'm just
But basically, like something along the lines
carry
of,
on.
it's the first time that the society has been warned that something it's doing is going to end it. Like they've been warned against, like, you know, doing this might lead to trouble or to conflict or something like that. But now this is the first time that we've heard like it's going to end. And maybe it isn't even by their own hand or something like that. Maybe there's just some impending doom.
Cool. Yes. So the machine grinds to a halt, and for the first time, the archivist starts to be downloaded with this information. You know, and yeah, go ahead.
Maybe an interesting twist to throw on this too. The machine always speaks in either the third or second person, and this is the first time it's spoken in the first person.
Yes, love that. And it says, "I dissent."
Ooh, nice. I like it.
Okay. Great.
Love it.
Thank you all so very much for playing. I am geeked about what's going on here in this story that we've created with these threads and all of that. And y'all are wonderful to play with. I'm super looking forward to next week and what we can all bring to the table. Obviously, feel free to hit me up. I know if anyone wants to debrief, please, I'll stick around, but please feel free to jump off. And otherwise, yeah, next week, same time, same place.
Jake, what kind of feedback are you looking for in this playtest? Just out of curiosity. Or
Yeah.
or do you want feedback? It's totally legit to not
Oh.
actually want feedback. I just was
100% always want feedback. Yeah. I think the stuff that we're looking for now is like we're mostly looking at stuff around this process, which is great since this is what we just did. The game, without having like pre-generated characters and setting and that sort of stuff, this kind of like the point of opening it to the table and everybody having a say and everyone kind of pitching in on characters and that sort of stuff necessarily means that if you were going to do a one shot, it would have to go a lot quicker than it usually does, right? And so like that's what kind of some of these like archetypes that I brought to the tonight are for. But ultimately I knew that it was I know that we have 4 sessions planned, so I wasn't going to push that because it's more fun if we kind of break from those as suits our story. So I guess mostly I'm looking for feedback on what feels too slow about the process, because we're trying to nail this place between between it being collaborative and everyone adding, but we all have a role to play, and that's different. Like if for me at least, it's different, and I'm not super familiar with a lot of systems that seek to purport that same sort of flat style of play. I don't know. This is a long way of saying I don't super know. Sorry.
No, that's fine. I mean, when I was first running, when I did my initial play test for the Between, which was last year, I didn't actually want a lot of active feedback until the very, very end. Like I wanted to mostly just to watch people play it, and that's a totally legit thing. So, I mean, if you just want to see how we do, I think that's legit.
Well, I'll say yes, I want to see how you all do. I want to know what parts of the process you loved, what parts felt like they dragged, and what parts felt like there were things you'd change. Both here in this initial thing and then also going forward. For me, it's all about how the play feels to the players. The problem is obviously so much of that is about the players and how we all interact and how that all goes. But the long and short of it is, if there are things that we could do to systematize that better, organize it better, that sort of stuff, we want to know. Yeah. Anyway, I'm going to stop the broadcast so that if there's any more debrief and that sort of stuff, we can do that off air. But thank you. I'm so super jazzed about everything that's happening, and I'm grateful for y'all for playing.